Hello and welcome to the press briefing for the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, 6th Council of Ministers, Education. I am Alicia Ali. Thank you so very much for joining us. Questions for this briefing can be posted in the Q&A section of our Zoom platform and on our Facebook. But before we get into the questions, please allow me to summarize the two-day meeting. Given the situation with the COVID-19 pandemic in the region and across the world, the meeting this year was held virtually. OECS ministers and their teams, along with regional agencies and international development partners, joined on our OECS platform. The 2020 chair of the Council, Honorable John Powell, Minister for Education in St. Kitts and Nevis, conferred the role of chair on his successor, the Honorable Dr. Gail Rigobert, Minister for Education in St. Lucia. Discussions were framed by the COVID-19 conditions and the debilitating effect it has had on the region's education system. The resilience of the OECS education system was highlighted, with evidence of some of the successful responses in education during the pandemic. Some interventions by ministries of education included food programs for vulnerable students, sanitization kits, print packages for home learning, and more than 15,000 devices across the region for students and teachers to connect with online learning. The novel part of this meeting was the inclusion of the youth voices, our primary stakeholders. A youth forum was held on the 28th of January 2021, where young people from all OECS member states, including our associate member states of Martinique and Guadeloupe, voiced their concerns with the education system and proposed recommendations. These recommendations were discussed during this two-day meeting. The youth recommendations to the ministers included the need to modernize classrooms, incorporate digital literacies, and endorse youth groups and councils. It is expected that the vision and plan from the Five Islands campus of the University of the West Indies will be connected to the Education Research Center, soon to be established by the University of the West Indies Cave Hill School of Education, which serves as the secretariat to the Eastern Caribbean Joint Board of Teacher Education. Ministers celebrated teachers and praised their industrious and innovative responses to the challenges wrought by the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's move to some selected key decisions from the 6th Council of Ministers Education. 1. To renew and strengthen efforts to align education in the region through a regional education group that will help guide education development of the OECS region. This group will comprise representatives from ministries of education and partner agencies and groups such as regional and international development partners, civil society organizations such as the youth and parent groups. 2. A new OECS harmonized primary curriculum to commence later this year with anticipated funding from the Global Partnership in Education. 3. Leverage economies of scale to produce goods and services for digital transformation initiatives in the sector. 4. Engage industry leaders to provide realistic pathways for student innovation and the next generation of careers. 5. Commission a regional committee to establish a mechanism to support the real-time data capturing in the OECS. From the select key decisions, you can see it has been quite an intense two-day meeting. Let me now introduce to you St. Lucia's Minister for Education, Innovation, Gender Relations, and Sustainable Development, the Honorable Dr. Gail Rigobert, to give her thoughts on this recently concluded meeting. Minister Rigobert, over to you.
Thank you, Alicia, and thanks for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. Let me begin by thanking the outgoing chair for his sterling service and to thank his team. They would have hosted us last year in St. Kitts. I also wish to thank the OECS Commission and the team from the Ministry of Education. We were able to navigate quite a few issues with, of course, COVID-19 at the core of the discussions. Evidently, we are not deterred. We recognize that COVID 19, like many other issues that we've had to deal with as vulnerable states, prove our resilience, our tenacity, and the value of regionalism to our own survival and, of course, to the benefit of the people of our region. Whereas the challenges wrought on by COVID 19 were highlighted, there were several accomplishments that also laced today's discussions. Among them, the ability of teachers, schools, ministries of education across the region to respond to the challenge, to prepare for our students, and to ensure that there was minimum disruption in their instruction. Additionally, the uptooling and reskilling of our teachers in a very short time was something that we all celebrated. We also applauded the partnership of financial agencies, donor agencies, social partners for their own agility, allowing for us to respond to the various challenges in the sectors. I also recognize, and with great admiration, the participation of our youth from across the region. I would have had the opportunity to meet with them before the start of the conference. They were very frank and honest, and the recommendations that they put forward, ministers and other participants agreed to embrace them. I wish to thank the youth for their participation. As I indicated in my meeting with them earlier in the week, indeed, you are the architects of your future. The expectation is that we will continue to accommodate youth voice in the business of the OECS, especially in the area of education, given, like I said to them, they are our core business. Our gracious thanks to donor agencies and development partners, and we trust that we can strengthen and deepen that relationship. And very importantly, that through the OECS, we can leverage and showcase the best practices learned, especially during the last 10 months or so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And at this point, I would like to now invite our ministers for education in the region to say just a few words to our people if they so feel moved. He's talking.
I would just like to convey on behalf of Antigua and Barbuda very strong sentiments to all of our teachers, all of our educators. I believe that the last 10 months have really brought out the best in our educators. And it is through their hard work that our young people, our students, continue to receive the instruction that is so vital to their growth and development. And so at this press conference, I would just like to commend them, to celebrate them, and to encourage them to continue to do the hard work that they've been doing and to continue to make us all proud. It is on their shoulders that we stand in the educational sector here today. Thank you very much.
Minister for Education, Antigua and Barbuda. certainly the case. We are all in this together. Would any other minister like to make a few comments? Minister Pierre?
Yesterday's meeting, to all of our stakeholders, I want to say this. We have come thus far because of the contribution, the collective efforts of all of our stakeholders in education throughout the region. And I think today, as an OECS region, we can say that we have done extremely well during this period because of that combined effort and the support of all of our partners within the region and externally. And so, as my colleague indicated earlier, I too want to say a special thank you to all persons who have contributed, all organizations that have contributed to what we have been able to achieve thus far. This has been a major challenge. We were not prepared for this. But again, as I said, we have come this far because of collaboration and partnership with our stakeholders. I believe over the past 2 days, we have really looked at some critical areas for the continued advancement and development of the education sector in the region. And I have full confidence in the team at the OECS Secretariat that they would continue to work with us as ministers to ensure that our goals, our aspiration, all of those dreams that we have for a better region, a better people through education, I believe that those can be accomplished. And so we continue to rely on the support of everyone to make this a reality.
Thank you very much, Minister Pierre. And so we have received some questions from our media colleagues from around the region, and this is a press briefing, and we would like to clarify and inform on any matter that is not clear or things that you would like to know. So again, you can post your questions on our Zoom platform in the Q&A tab, and you can also connect with us on Facebook on the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States Facebook page. We are taking your questions and comments there as well. So the first question, Madam Chair, is what does the OECS Harmonized primary curriculum entail? And were any discussions held on an academic recovery program for students of the region?
Thank you for that question, Alicia. In fact, in Mrs. Simon's comprehensive report on the work of the Commission, she was able to highlight the levels of success we've had with the recovery plan in the various territories. Let me also indicate that with respect to the harmonization of curricula, that is now more than ever so relevant given our recent experiences of Dominica, for example, when citizens were forced to relocate temporarily to other islands, and to the extent that education is a right and we ought to provide for our children, the thinking is, in keeping with the spirit of movement of persons, that should and or when students move throughout the region, that they too should benefit from a seamless reintegration into any part of the system in any country in the region. It is also to ensure that we have standards that inform what we do at that level in the sector as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We do have another question. Academic recovery is important. Was the impact of COVID-19 on the social and psychological development of the region's children discussed? And what are the plans to address this?
I must indicate that the issue of the mental and emotional well-being of not just our students, but teachers as well, that was discussed, and to the extent that throughout the OECS region, we're able to highlight examples of psychosocial support given to parents in some jurisdictions, and certainly to students and teachers in all of the jurisdictions. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With us, we also have the Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Dr. Jules. This question is for you. You have referred to the opportunities in education that the COVID-19 disruptions have provided. Can you please elaborate on these opportunities? You can speak.
Can you hear me? Yes. As I have indicated on many occasions, COVID presented us with an opportunity to go immediately where we had been planning to go for some time and talking about going for some time, but had not moved with sufficient alacrity. The whole question of remote learning, online learning, was actually pivoted and accelerated by the necessities of COVID. So there's been a lot that has been done in that space. And in this meeting today, a lot of time was spent sharing the innovations and the ideas. Some of it was high tech, some of it was very basic tech, some of it was no tech. But nevertheless, they represented significant responses to the crisis. And this is something that we are going to compile from the reports of member states. It was agreed that the Commission would compile these experiences, that they would be made available across to all member states in a very structured way, and incorporated into the Oecs education reform strategy going forward. One of the big things that has come out of this meeting is that exemplars and best practice exist everywhere across the Oecs footprint. And these practices anywhere, we take these best practices from anywhere and make them regular practice everywhere. So that has been one of the most important outcomes of the meeting. You asked for specific examples. As I said, the pivot to online learning is one such thing. There were a lot of curriculum innovations done by teachers, some of them no tech, for example, teachers preparing packages of material that were parceled and dropped off to homes of students for their parents to utilize. We had examples in the school feeding arena where in some member states, whereas students were not able to receive meals at school, because the home has now become the focus of learning, and recognizing the socioeconomic disadvantages of some families in a couple of the member states, school feeding packages were dropped off to the homes of those students, delivered to the homes. So there are a number, in every area there are these innovations, and as I said, we need to make use of that and make these best practices, make best practices in one space become regular practices everywhere.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jules. We do have another question. With reference to the Regional Committee to establish a mechanism to support the capturing of real-time data in the OECS, what data is being captured and how will that data be used? Madam Chair?
Thank you very kindly. In fact, on concluding her report a moment ago, I said to Mrs. Simon that she and her unit did well to solicit the data from member states. We know that we in the region are not the greatest fans of data collection or analysis. And I must say, what I saw presented today suggests to my mind that we are living true to the promise to ensure that we have data-inspired policy making. And therefore, I want to congratulate again member countries for the extent to which they were able to share that data. Admittedly, there are areas in which we can do better, and I know that given the kind of cross-fertilization of ideas and experiences that were highlighted today, that we expect that we can cover a wider range of variables as time goes by.
In addition to what Chairperson Dr. Regabert has said on this question, I want to also add and invite, in fact, the press and persons following to go to the OECS website to look at the OECS Education Digest, which has been published several years running now. This represents perhaps the most comprehensive report or data set available in education in the Caribbean across member states. And as Minister indicated, the intention is to go deeper and further with this provision of data. We had one of the interesting things was a presentation by the the Five Isles campus of the University of the West Indies, where we are talking now about a facility that would enable the teaching and the incorporation of artificial intelligence, where we would like to go ultimately with the data that we have on education, and we are seeking through the cooperation of institutions like the Caribbean Examinations Council providing us with anonymized data to be able to do some artificial intelligence mining of that data so that we can end up with real information that can be used to target specific interventions that are necessary so that no learner, when we talk glibly about no learner being left behind, we can actually be able to mine that data in a way that helps us to identify the particular prescriptions required in every classroom, in every school in the Oecs in order to make that difference in learning ability.
Thank you very much. And as we're talking about no one left behind, it brings me to our final question. It is wonderful that the Oecs is providing devices to member states for students and teachers. However, there are concerns about connectivity, stability, and access to internet for teachers and students, as well as training to use these online modalities. Was this discussed, and how will this be addressed? Madam Chair?
Thank you. Absolutely. In reviewing what it is we mean by the infusion of ICTs in education or e-education, we recognize that there are 4 key components, among others, connectivity being a core issue. And for some of us, we are already benefiting from a region-wide project under COSIP, and there are efforts as well to deepen or strengthen the connectivity across the region, recognizing fully that we are really in the age of digital education.
Thank you very much, Madam Minister and Madam Chair. So now I will hand over to the Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, Dr. Didicus Jules, to give us a few words before we close this wonderfully intense and productive 2-day meeting.
Well, I'd like to begin by thanking the media for their attendance at this, and also those persons from the public and across the board who are online viewing this press conference. Let me express the great appreciation of the Oecs Commission to the Government of St. Lucia and the Minister of Education, Dr. Gail Rigobert, and her team for the great support provided. Although this has been a virtual meeting, trust me, a virtual meeting does not correspond to compare in any way to a physical face-to-face meeting, because the logistics of this meeting have been far more intricate and have involved large teams of persons, many of whom are invisible, and we express, it would be too numerous to mention, as they often say, but we want to express our deep appreciation because we have a huge technical team just manning the internet architecture behind this. I expect that we will make available in the next couple of days access to the VFairs platform that we have been using, which is a conferencing platform that we use for the Sustainable Development Movement we had in 2020 and which we're going to be using in 2021. It has immense capabilities. Aside from while the ministers were meeting, there were side meetings being held. We had exhibition halls where best practices were being shown, repositories where ministers and their officials could download documents that they wanted to share with each other. So this meeting represented a qualitatively different order of doing business than we have done before. And I also want to express appreciation to Dr. Radix, who's the head of the social cluster at the Oecs, Mrs. Sisra Simon, and her team in the Education Development Unit for the extraordinary work that they have done, not just in relation to this event, but for all of the work that was reported to the Ministers of Education. And let us be clear that whatever the Oecs has achieved, we've not done sitting on the hill at the Mon in Castries, St. Lucia. This has been done through the very active collaboration of the best expertise in every member state of the Oecs. We have virtual working groups that by the last count, I measured over 30, I calculated over 30 virtual working groups that have been working since the time of Ebola looking at engaging the best expertise in different subject matter areas in the OECS so that whatever we do is being done in concert with member states with the active collaboration of the best expertise that we have. At this meeting, ministers were asked to examine and approve the work that has been undertaken and the plans of the OECS collective, meaning the ministries of education working with us, the teachers, the stakeholders, to approve the plans going forward. And a lot of that focus was not just on the new normal, on what we do to work better in the context of the prevailing conditions, but to also project forward at the possibility that this new normal may mean living with climate change, living with disasters, living with COVID, and what are the implications of that for not just a tinkering with changes in education, but for a deep transformation of our education sectors. A point of much interest in discussion was the whole notion that whereas before, if you think of any of us in our daily lives, our home was really our place of rest and relaxation with our families. Now this has completely changed. In the past, we left home to go to work. We left home to go to exercise in the gym. We left home to go to restaurants to eat. We left home to party. Now the home has become the central focus of our lives. We work at home, we eat at home, we study at home, our children go to school at home. So there's a whole recalibration that needs to be done. And what happens then to the infrastructure of the school? How do we recalibrate the school so that the learning now is taking place and will conceivably take place more online than at the physical schools? We now need to recalibrate those schools so that they become institutions of collective activity of physically distant students going forward. But the home has to become a place where the infrastructure of online learning and so on is put in place. And that has wide implications beyond education to what we do with the telecoms, with access to broadband, with the training of teachers for the new pedagogies and so on. There was a clear commitment by ministers and our development partners to deepen our collaboration on these fronts and to go not just deeper but wider. Of special note is the principle of giving voice and listening, a listening ear to students and to parents in this whole process of recalibration. So these are the main takeaways for us. And again, I want to express our appreciation to the Government and Minister of Education of St. Lucia, to all the ministers and their teams who participated so actively, and to the wider fraternity and the virtual working groups that have enabled us to achieve the successes that we have achieved. And we have committed collectively to addressing the weaknesses because this is all new, this is unprecedented. There have been errors made, there have been weaknesses in some of the approaches, but we are learning from each other and we intend to go forward much stronger.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jules. We are quite fortunate in our region to have such passionate educators and policymakers, and I must commend all of the teams. Just to echo Dr. Jules' sentiment and Madam Chair's sentiment, the amount of work that has gone into putting this meeting together, the work behind the scenes, the preparation, the data collection, and the plans moving forward. I am very confident that we will see results, we will see impact, because we have so many people committed to our education sector, developing and innovating our education sector across the region. And with that, we come to the end of our briefing for today. This is the end of the 6th Council of Ministers, Education of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. I am Alicia Ali, reminding you, we are one community growing together. Please remember to stay safe. Thank you.